Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into my astrology update for the month of Aries in March through to April 2023. My name is Chris Robbins, and this is my astrology show, soulworkastrology.co.uk. And I got a lot to cover today, and we're going to go through lots of different changes that are taking place throughout the month of March and April. Quite a lot of significant things happening, some very powerful changes taking place. And I'm going to be taking you through certainly what I think is going on through this really powerful period that we're in over the next month. So we'll start off with just acknowledging, right, that I have two ginormous horns sticking out the top of my head, as you can see in the background on Zoom. And, I am a moon in Aries, by the way, so it's very indicative of my moon sign. Aries does rule the head in astrology. And, if we think of the animal, the ram, and how that animal, charges through with its head. It's a very powerful head. I was watching a YouTube video recently, watching a ram. I think it was in Afghanistan. It didn't like a car that was driving through a bit of forest where it was its kind of den area, and it just started running at this car. And I mean, it did a lot of damage to this car, and the ram didn't even seem to be fazed by the fact that it just kept on ramming into this car, right? So the Aries energy is a very, very powerful energy, and it's very indicative of charging forward, beginning a new cycle, moving forward, initiating, right? Leading, pioneering. It's a very instinctual, impulsive, forward-moving, driving energy, okay? And there is a tremendous amount of that energy going on astrologically right now. We actually have a whole line of planets in the sign of Aries, which isn't always that usual. In astrology, we work with up to 12 major planets, and they can be spread out in lots of different parts of the solar system, and therefore corresponding to different astrological signs that are placed in different parts of the heaven. But, when they all kind of like compile in one area or in a few areas, there's an intensification of energy, and that's what's going on right now. We'll be going into that in a few minutes. Okay. So let's talk about the astrological new year. So is it really just an astrological new year from that perspective, or is it a new year altogether? Because are we really in the new year period on the 1st of January? Or do you really feel like it is the new energy on January the 1st? Or do you feel like it's more like the new energy when the winter is coming to an end and the air is fresh again, and the seeds are coming through the earth with the plants beginning to sprout, and everything's growing again when it hasn't been in winter. Winter's that hibernation period, right? The plants and some animals are hibernating through winter, and even human beings, we don't do that much through winter, right? So are we really in a new energy on January the 1st, or is the new energy the spring? So the spring does begin officially with the spring equinox, which is an astrological fact, with the 20th of March. And it's also the time that we count the very first day of the astrological calendar. So the very first sign of the zodiac, the energy that takes and initiates the entire astrological calendar into motion, is Aries, the first sign of the zodiac. That ram, those horns, that energy charging forward, and the power to command and take forward an entire cycle of energy in all frames of living, right? Starts with Aries. Okay, so that's why we have these animals indicative of these astrological signs. I sometimes even think that the animals are actually You know, it's no coincidence that we have them. Maybe they kind of like have evolved from the astrological influences and our representations at some level of their energy. Perhaps that's the truth. Who actually knows? Okay. So I am an Aries moon. My moon is in Aries. And the moon is in Aries today as well as I'm recording this. So it's a perfect time for me to be doing it. And my rising sign is Cancer. And right now, the rising energy is also Cancer. I'm an Aquarius sun, but the sun is in Aries. So what we mean, you know, when we have a month of astrology, right, the star sign months, which is the most common form of astrology we know, it's when the sun appears in that sign, and it moves approximately every 4 weeks, you know, just over every 4 weeks around a different sign. Okay, and that's what we mean by that. So the sun right now is in Aries. The moon is also in Aries. Okay, but I'm just going to show you a little chart here astrologically, because we actually have quite a lot of stuff going on in Aries. So you should be able to see that right now. So this is the zodiac placement. This is the planetary placement. This is a snapshot of our solar system in relation to Earth from about half an hour ago. So I said the ascendant, the rising is in Cancer. If you don't know what that means, it's just me getting carried away that it matches my energy, as does the moon in Aries. And we have the sun, 1 degree in Aries, because it moved in just in the last couple of days. And we have Mercury in Aries. We have the moon in Aries. We have Chiron in Aries. We have Jupiter in Aries. And we also have the mythical planet Vulcan, which will appear about here in between Mercury and the sun. So we have 6 prominent placements in Aries. So this is why this is significant. Because if we talk in terms of 12 planets, which we use in esoteric astrology, because the sun is regarded as a planet, the moon is regarded as a planet, Vulcan is regarded as a planet, and of course the Earth is a planet. So if you add all of those up, you get your 12 planets in esoteric astrology, right? 6 of them, no, 5 of them plus Chiron are appearing in Aries, right? Because Chiron isn't regarded as a major planet, even though it's quite a powerful influence. So that's where this intensification comes from, and why it's really necessary to spend some time looking at this. Because what does this really mean? Well, the moon, a new moon appear in Aries at the same time as the sun's movement into the new astrological year in Aries is quite powerful, because a new moon cycle represents a new phase and new beginnings. So it's just adding to that energy of like this new beginning, this new phase that we're moving in. And we look at Jupiter. Jupiter is the sign of kind of like enhancing something. It energizes, it takes things with it. So what we're talking about here is like Aries is the sign of leading, it's the sign of pioneering, it's the sign of taking something forward, it's the sign of beginning anew, it's the sign of driving something out there, right? Leading. And Jupiter just takes things with it and enhances the possibility of success. So Jupiter, you know, is a massive planet. It's the biggest planet in the solar system. And, you know, if anything kind of like comes near Jupiter in terms of orbit, it can risk getting caught within its powerful energy, its powerful gravitational field, right? Because it's such a big, powerful influence. If we archetypally associate that with where Jupiter is and how it's positioned with what we're looking at, we can see, right, that it's just adding to whatever we take forward, whatever we begin anew, whatever we lead with and pioneer from this new energy right now. The chances of success are going to be increased because Jupiter's on your side, and it brings prosperity, success, abundance, expansion, and it takes things with it. People, it moves things, it reorbits things, okay? So we've got this power as we lead to be able to recondition and reorbit things with us, where we go and where we move. So the whole part of the wisdom of astrology is learning and opening our minds to new understanding so we can act more intelligently. That's really what astrology is. It's enhancing an awareness and allowing us to move through into new actions and new levels of consciousness and new activity within our lives. Aries is one of the signs of activity. Yeah, it has to be, because it kicks off the entire 12 signs of the zodiac. It's got the power to move everything forward on a new cycle. So if you think about all the other 12 signs of the zodiac and what their qualities are, what their powers are, what their strengths are, what their unique challenges and indifferences and qualities are, right? And Aries can spur all of them into a new cycle. That's how powerful it is. And there's 5 planets plus Chiron going on at the same time. So that's very significant, okay? Now, another thing that's very powerful is, if you look, this is Saturn here, okay? And it's at 1 degree in Pisces. Saturn does a full orbit back to the same sign, or changes the sign, every 2.5 years, right? So it's been 29.5 years since Saturn was last in Pisces, right? And it shifted a couple of weeks ago. Pisces is the age we are moving out of. Entire astrological ages condition, influence, set the tone of existence itself on our planet. This is how paramount in significance this understanding is. It's like, as an astrologer, it's just so clear to me, an entire period of evolution is given by the astrological age that we're in. And we're moving out of Pisces and into the Age of Aquarius, the Age of Aquarius. You might know that song by The Fifth Dimension. I love that song. It's so cheesy, but I absolutely love it. And Pisces is where we're coming from. Pisces has got a lot to do with religion, devotion. It's a very emotional sign. It's given us the ability to develop the emotions and our intuition and our emotional thinking and our emotional reactions as well, and the unconscious mind and things like that, and tune us more into spirit as well. Saturn is moving into Pisces. It is in Pisces, but it's moving, it's going to move and progress into it, okay? So that's quite a big deal, because it's not just moving a sign, it's moving into the sign of the age that we're coming out of. That might sound, well, what the hell does that mean? Saturn deals with restructuring things. Saturn is one of the heavy players in the planetary scheme. It's a very powerful influence, right? It changes the track. It's like a train track never moves until people actually come along. It's not like a road, like trains, you know, there's a very straight track. It's going that way on that exact track, yeah? The roads are very different. There's a lot of movement. You can easily change direction and turn off down a different lane or do whatever you want to do. A train track is much more definite, right? Much more linear. Saturn is like that. It like takes you down a linear track. But so when Saturn moves sign, it's like changing the track. So we have changes that are going to be happening in relation to the age that we've been a part of. Much religious influence, the emotional self, the unconscious. You know, Pisces rules criminal activity. It also rules, you know, it's got a lot to do with trauma, but particularly to do with the power of religion, right? So we will see big changes happen within religion in the next 2.5 years. How critical religion begins to think, setting itself free of some of the boundaries and constraints that it's imposed on itself and imposed on people in the last God knows how long, right? And part of that is made possible in this cycle, particularly this particular 2.5 years, because Aries, will punch through and it will change things. And we're so rapidly moving into this Aquarian age, which holds so much possibility, so much exemplary standard of new thinking and innovation and revolution. That you put all that together in the mix, then you will get a period of Saturn in Pisces that is being innovative and starts to revolutionize itself in a way that it never has done before. In our own lives, if you're a religious person, you're probably not watching this. Maybe you should send this video to somebody who is religious to start, what do you think about what's being said? Because religion has conditioned us to only think in a certain way around spiritual ideas and ideals, and Saturn wants to start changing that. Okay, all right, so I'm just going to stop sharing this screen for a moment. So I want to talk about this here. Bear with me a moment. So I'm now going to share with you an incident that's just happened in the last 24 hours, which is a church that is just burned down. The New Jersey Fountain of Life Church Center is engulfed in flames. So this is a clear example of an Aries energy combined with a Saturn in Pisces, because we talked obviously about Pisces having a lot to do with religion, in a religious era. And Aries is a fire sign, and it's a sign that destroys things. And I'm just going to quickly read out an astrological passage from Alice Bailey's material, who is the source of esoteric astrology. Fire is the great liberator, clearing away obstacles and bringing forth the truth. So if I just said that Saturn will help reorder and restructure things to bring about, you could say a changing of the old systems that allow to bring about a deeper truth or a deeper awareness and bringing us closer to what that reality is. And Aries, is something that can often destroy things, and it's very destructive in the way that it can bring about change. And being a fire sign, you combine that Saturn in Pisces with 5 planets in Aries at the time of the spring equinox, and you get this church burning down in New Jersey, right? So let's just quickly play this video on the BBC website.
It's a devastating loss. The sanctuary has just been completely burned. The church is not brick and mortar. The church is really the body of believers, and God will help us through this.
That church is in the design of the hexagram.
The firefighters did a tremendous job of trying to stop
which
the fire
embodies
internally. It was just
the
the
Star
size
of
of the
David,
building,
the
the amount of fire that was here. We had to switch our operation to a defensive operation.
Question I have: what is it about that particular church that is gleaning for a deeper truth, that is perhaps struggling to reach it to current or previous religious constraints? I wouldn't like to speculate exactly what's going to come about when that church rebuilds and the impact that it will have on their communities and other communities. But we can just speculate that fire does incinerate, it burns, it transmutes both at a spiritual level and a physical level, and it can allow new things to come about. That's a very Saturn Pisces. When there's a lot of significant astrological changes happening all at once. We want to look at that exact moment in time, what comes about within that day or that few day period, right? And there's quite a lot going on in the political arena. Okay, so we have, Donald Trump is thinking he's about to get indicted for accusations around lying and paying some porn star loads of money to say that she never had an affair with him before he got elected, and he's lying about it, and she's saying that he is lying and he's saying that he isn't, and he's lying and thinking he can get away with the lies. And right, so that's one thing that's going on. But I'm bringing this up because it's happening at the time of these 5 planets in Aries on the 20th, 21st of March. And why is this important? Well, I'm going to go into a little astrological lesson right now. Okay. So in astrology, the zodiac signs all work with a couple of planets. So planets and astrological signs. So for example, Mars works very closely with Aries in terms of when we're talking about the lower nature of the human being, the emotional self, the unevolved self, the egotistical self, the instinctual self. And I don't just mean the egotistical self and the negative self. That could be quite a limited way of putting it. But we have what we call the rulerships, okay? And on the higher kind of perspective of Aries, Mercury works with Aries because Mercury is connected to the evolved mind. So when you see people in human society who are leading, but they're not leading from the ego, and they're not leading from an emotionally reactive space, and they're not leading from what we would refer to as the astral nature, which is the emotional nature, which is the, where the emotional body is at in its development, in its egotistical self, in its maturity. That's the astral nature. And Mercury, as an esoteric ruler, as a higher ruler, doesn't work with the astral nature. It works with the mind of Aries. So when we see people pioneering and innovating and leading the way forward, but they're doing it from the intellect, but they're not just doing it from the intellectual thinking, they're doing it from like an intelligent, more genius, more really deeper kind of intelligence of the mind, right? We have Mercury influencing Aries, okay? So we have, it's all layered based on where we're at individually, how we're expressing ourselves, or what we're generally overall like as human beings. Because some people can get very stuck in working with the energies of the orthodox rulers because they're not evolved enough to reach for the higher intelligences of things, or the more soulful and potent influences. But, and sometimes, you could be a spiritual person or an evolved person that's working with the higher influences, but you still have parts of your nature that need to grow up and evolve. So you could be working with both. And the Tibetan master Dwal Kul, who is over 300 years old, living in Tibet, channels his work through Alice Bailey 80 years ago and Claire DeRoy in Canada in the modern day, says that as we're transitioning into the Aquarian age, we want to work with both the orthodox rulers and the esoteric rulers. So we're looking at the real world, the material world, the emotional world, the physical world, how we live and act as normal human beings. And we're becoming spiritual, we're becoming more conscious, And it doesn't mean that we're just becoming more spiritual. It means we're becoming more humane, we're becoming more compassionate, we're becoming more intelligent, we're becoming more conscious. That's a lot of what the esoteric rulership actually means, okay? So I'm explaining this because at the time we've had this transition into the spring equinox, we've had a really good example of 2 world leaders identifying an orthodox rulership and an esoteric rulership, a Mars influence with Aries and a Mercury influence with Aries. So we're going to go into that right now, and I hope you'll be able to stay with this, okay? It's taken me years to get my head around it as an astrologer and really, really begin to understand it. So I'm not necessarily expecting you to get this from what I've just said. If some of it makes sense and you can kind of keep up with it, that is totally good enough, all right? And if you don't get any of it, just you know, you can carry on listening to what I'm saying, okay? So let's go over to Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is on the verge of becoming, as he would put it, indicted. You can smell it coming, right? For lying about this incident I just mentioned. You know, and one of the things he's doing, he's asking his fans to fight and protest on his behalf. Not only is he lying, very likely, I don't know that for sure, but it's pretty obvious that he is. He's asking people to defend him because he can't agree with the fact that people are doing this to him. That is just a completely, you know, egotistical level of emotional, astral immaturity. There's no real mind of intelligence working there. There's no soul energy really influencing his ego. That is a complete emotional astral reaction. And that is a Mars ruling Aries influence, because Mars is a sign, not as a sign, as a planet, deals with partly our lower instinctual nature, whether it's sexuality. Yes, Mars has a picture of an arrow on the end. It looked like a phallus. It's the symbol of the male, yes. And we know that Mars is the planet of war, you might read in the newspapers. So it's, you know, the male, the sexuality, it's war. And at the time we're moving into the spring equinox, all this Aries energy, that exact same time, Donald Trump is dealing with, one, he's a man, and two, he's dealing with defending himself highly emotionally in a warlike manner around an accusation to do with sex. Brilliant example of Mars as the ruler of Aries, okay? And he's asking people to fight on his behalf, and there's people making threats towards government leaders, innocent government leaders in the United States who are just doing their jobs to carry out the actions, whether they agree with it or not. And these people are being threatened by him and his fans who believe that he's the next messiah or he's the one to challenge the system or whatever, because he's an independent man with a big mouth. You know, and regardless of what my opinion is or isn't, the point here is that, can you see from what I've said that this really is an example of how this Mars energy is really influencing what's going on with Donald Trump, okay? So the next one we're going to turn to is the president's re-elected president of China, Mr. Xi Jinping. It took me quite a while to learn how to say his name. All right, so here we have Xi Jinping at the same time that Donald Trump is being potentially indicted, or certainly talking about thinking he will be. We have, at the turn of the spring equinox and the movement into Aries, Aries rules leaders. Leaders is the sign that rules leaders. We have two leaders, Xi Jinping and obviously President Putin. You can see on the screen here, meeting in Moscow. And it's very profound what has come out of this, because, you know, apart from Xi Jinping, you know, really kissing Putin's arse crack and talking about, you know, how they're great friends and everything, which sometimes I guess in politics you might need to do a bit to get people as your friends and get them on your side. It kind of might suit the purpose sometimes. I can understand that. What's quite amazing is that Xi Jinping has presented Russia with a 12-point plan for peace in the Ukraine that involves everybody, right? And Putin is actually listening to him. And if you look at that plan, go and look at the plan. I've only browsed over it, but it's in some ways it's quite genius. And this is an example of how Xi Jinping is working with Mercury, the esoteric ruler. Because remember I said that when Mercury becomes the ruler of Aries, it's thinking with the mind, and not just the lower mind, but it starts to tap into the more conscious mind, the more intelligent thinking, right? So this is an example of a leader who is working with, at least to some degree, Mercury, the esoteric ruler, is an influence at the time of this, massive Aries energy. Okay, brilliant example of it. Couldn't be two better examples. Donald Trump, defending himself and kicking off and reacting and lying and almost starting a war again within political circles around some sex accusation, which is all a Mars energy and it's all a lower ego emotional reaction. And then you have Mercury, the esoteric ruler, thinks from the mind, thinks from the intelligence of the mind, and he's presented at that same time a plan that could end the war in the Ukraine. I wasn't really that sure what to think of Xi Jinping, because when he was talking about being re-elected in the last couple of months, he did say that I'm not going to rule out the use of force to integrate Taiwan into China. And maybe he said that just to please a few people in the Communist Party to get them on his side. But clearly, it's quite amazing what he has put forward to Putin, and it really demonstrates that he's not a man of war. That he wants peace, that he wants the best for human society, and he's prepared to be somebody who can get down to the diplomacy and make a difference. So the opposite sign of Aries is Libra. In astrology, everything always works in pairs. You never just want to look at one sign by itself if it's prominent. You always look at its opposite sign, because even if there's no planets in that sign, it's always there in the background as like a shadow energy. And the opposite of Aries is Libra. Libra rules mediation, diplomacy, hence its connection to politics and relationship. So two men there, in a balanced relationship, he's mediating, he's being the mediator between Russia and the Ukraine and the West. And that's phenomenal that he's doing that. It's a real gift to see him stepping up and embodying this Mercurian influence as the ruler of Aries. Okay? So I hope that's been a demonstration of how different rulers connect and work with different signs of the zodiac, and how the astrology can help teach us so much about what's going on. All right, so what else are we actually going to go into today? Some quite important stuff, actually, before I forgot. So I'm recovering from a cold at the moment, and I was taught by a lady who trained me in naturopathy that if you get unwell around a seasonal change, really pay attention to what's clearing from your system. And I've been waiting to do this YouTube channel for a few years. I used to do other astrological updates with groups of other people, but I've never done it by myself. And when I got ill, just like around the 18th or the 19th of March, my throat was just like making noises by itself. A lot of clearing energy going on in my throat. My mum actually... Sorry, Zoom just cut off there. Bad internet connection. My mum thought I might have streptococcal A. because I had quite a bad throat. But you know, it was a cold, and you get a bad throat on a cold. But also a bit of a clearing of the throat chakra energies, the sacral energies, which are connected also to the throat chakra. So I can get out there and communicate what I've got to communicate without the need to really just partner with other people. So, you know, it's great that I'm doing this today. You know, so what do you want to get out there and pioneer and get on with that you're not getting on with? You might want to pop that in the chat box on the YouTube bit down here. And even if you're watching this a few weeks or a few months or whenever, could even be a few years after this, you know, there's still a lot to get about what's being said, right? I learned things about astrology that were written 20 years, 50 years ago, 80 years ago, because the understanding is still so synergistic and so relevant to help teach us and help us understand things. Okay, so something is happening astrologically on Thursday, the 23rd of March 2023, that hasn't happened since 1777. So what is it? Pluto, the planet, one of the planets of transformation, destruction, rebirth, the soul's purpose. Yeah, people in places with high power, is changing signs from Capricorn into Aquarius. Now, it does this about every 50 to just over 20 years, right? But when Pluto last changed sign in 2008 from Sagittarius into Capricorn, that was when we had the recession. That was when the banks came down. That was when a lot of the financial system started excessively abusing the public blatantly right before our eyes. Kind of like the edge was taken off it. They're still doing it. You know, bank charges had to be refunded, and mortgage rates dropped very low for a very long period of time, and things like that. So there's a lot to talk about Pluto being in Capricorn, and we're not going to do that today. I will cover that on a video in a couple of months' time. But we have Pluto going into Aquarius tomorrow for the first time since 1777, which is the 1 year after the American Declaration of Independence, right? 1776. So it's telling us that much of that founding charter of the American Constitution of Independence, I think that's what it's called, was created in a Pluto in Aquarius cycle. It was changed and abused and not upheld and misused, as all things are. You know, a lot of things out there are very innocent and very sacred when they're laid down, and they get used and abused and changed over time. So why this is important to talk about is because we're going to see, you know, the American people who have really been struggling, you know, they're at odds with themselves politically, they're fighting, they have an inner government, they have an outer government, they have a dark government, they have the public government. You know, everybody's fighting with everybody, and it's just crazy. And a lot of Americans who live outside of the United States are saying, you know, my country's lost its soul. I don't want to live there right now. You know, this Pluto and Aquarius cycle is going to really allow the United States to begin to rediscover who it is and what it's about, because it's reconnecting to that original, innocent, sacred principle of the founding of their own charter, and really looking at that again. You know, that's one of the things that's going to happen. But we're moving into the age of Aquarius. So we're moving out of Pisces and into a 2000 or so year period of Aquarius. It officially begins in 2117 astrologically. So we've got about another 95 years before we're fully in it. But we're in a transition period. This has given us the technological age, the internet, communication, global travel. You know, this massively connected world that we live in. It's because of this age of communication. And it's also the age of altruism, of service, of unity, of the collective. of humanity. So it's the age that holds much, much promise. This is the age where humanity will truly, truly discover who and what it is it's about. It's the great age of transition. It's the age of utopia, right? And this is what this age is going to be about, which I could say so much about, and I could not possibly talk about in 25 hours, never 2.5 minutes. So why that is so critical to mention is because, yeah, Pluto changes sign every 2 decades or so, but it's changing into the sign, it's moving into the sign of the coming age. So it's going to deal with taking down structures, transforming things, removing hidden power in high places. Pluto's got a lot to do with the underworld. It's the god of the underworld. And, you know, we have all of these labels for authorities and groups or people in power, such as monarchy, aristocracy, democracy, plutocracy, oligarchy, yeah, all of these names, the plutocrats. And really, you know, when we look at Xi Jinping and President Putin, in many ways, you could say they're actually plutocrats. 2 plutocrats, because Pluto, the actual definition of a plutocrat is somebody who has come into power through wealth and influence. Monarchy is obviously inherited through lineage. Oligarchy, I think there's also meant to be an inheritance level to do with oligarchy as well. Often is with aristocracy too. Whereas plutocrats is gained through power and wealth. So a question I've always had is all of these Russian people that have been sanctioned in the last couple of years, the oligarchs, are they really oligarchs, or are they plutocrats? So, you know, this connection, no coincidence, of the name plutocrat originating from the planet Pluto, because Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio in astrology, and Scorpio rules deceit and hidden things, and power behind the scenes, skeletons in the closets, the underworld, the dark, the hidden forces, as well as many other things that are good too. It also rules the underworld. So Pluto is the ruler of the underworld, but it also reveals the underworld. It destroys the underworld and rebirths it. So it is the bringer of the underworld and the destroyer of it. So anything that is really standing in the way of this utopia that we're moving into, this new age, this golden age that was this promised to be developed over decades, generations, centuries ultimately, Pluto is going to shake open and even destroy some of those structures that are in the way of what's going to come about. So we will see a massive revolution to do with Aquarian ideals, what serves humanity, the economy, the climate, all different levels of human existence will be changed. But also the shadow side, the underworld side of Aquarius is mass control through technology. So one of the things we've observed in the last couple of weeks to do with Pluto beginning to get ready to change into Aquarius is this, you know, everybody getting a text in the UK that we have to respond to on our phones and update our notifications. So if an emergency happens, everybody gets a text. What a load of rubbish. Like, if that's not somebody's quick and great idea to control everybody, right? We don't have emergencies in the UK. Very, very few people ever get hit by nature's emergencies or national emergencies. It doesn't happen. but they're asking everybody, you know, the primary phone contact that we have to be given away to the government. So they're really clear on as many people as they can, and their primary source of communication is in their data bank. Yeah, it's a control mechanism. It's keeping tabs on the public. This is the shadow side of Pluto and Aquarius, is more of the underworld controlling the masses, Aquarius, through technology, Aquarius, okay? But, you know, that can serve the purpose of also waking people up to the system of control that is in place, all right? But massive change is taking place. It's like, I want to like get together with people and celebrate Pluto moving into Aquarius. Now, it only dips its toes in for 2.5 months, and then it retrogrades back into Capricorn, where we'll see more, you know, of the global leaders being challenged, taken out of power. We've seen a tremendous amount of leaders lose power in the last 1.5 years. This is to do with Pluto picking up a lot of power and energy and speed within Capricorn, the sign of government, right? So it's taking down people who are abusing power and who are not fit for power. That's why Boris Johnson in the UK is you know, still under Partygate investigation, because things have to change. You can't be a leader and lie to the parliament. You know, we know that throughout history, we've had infinite amount of people lying to parliament, but somebody has to be the dummy. Somebody has to become the demonstration, right? The example. Okay, so this is why we're seeing this happen. So then we have the full moon on the 6th of April, and we're told in esoteric teachings that it's the first of 3 very powerful full moons. So the first 3 moons of the astrological year in Aries, Taurus, and Gemini are connected to the spiritual powers of the hierarchy and Shambhala, those who are moving humanity forward and who influence all of the great trends in human thinking and development, from the arts to engineering, to the sciences, to music, philosophy, to teaching. You know, the great masters behind the human race, through their 7 governments and ashrams, steer humanity into new levels of thinking, being, and acting and doing, right? They work their power primarily, as far as moons are concerned, through the 3 moons of April, May, and June. The first moon coincides with the Christian festival, so it's the full moon of the Christ and his willful purpose to impact, uplift, and awaken humanity. So take some time around the 6th of April to really get present to the need for, I wouldn't even say a spiritual, but a more conscious, awakened rhythm and influence upon all level of human living and existing. Think of the movements that are taking place in humanity, from beginning to clean up the oceans, to taking care of animals, to recycling, to how we talk to one another, how we respect one another. Somebody starts this somewhere, and these new conscious levels of thinking. Remember, Mercury has got a lot to do with the illumined mind. The illumined minds of men and women are awakened by Mercury, right? Mercury gives us the power of the gods to think more intelligently and think more geniusly, and it works as the higher ruler through Aries. So at this time of this full moon, we want to be thinking more intelligently from the mind. You know, from the plane of mind, I rule is the esoteric acronym for Aries. It rules from the plane of the mind, but not rulership in terms of domination. It can be rulership in terms of leadership and pioneering, that which takes us forward within all levels of thinking, of acting within the human race. So I think that's really more than enough for today's session, and plenty to chew on, right? If you got any questions about anything I talked about, something you want clarity on, you can always pop in the comment section below, or you can email me inquiries@soulworkastrology.co.uk. If you're interested in looking at having a chart reading with me, my chart readings are primarily based on esoteric astrology, which is looking at your spiritual path, perhaps your soul purpose, and really, you know, looking at the astrological chart and the challenges you're having in life, where you're going next, opening up to new levels of thinking from that spiritual perspective. Astrology from the esoteric perspective is really perfect for that. Okay, you can check that out at soulworkastrology.co.uk. All of my readings are done, well, most of them via Zoom, and you get a recording with them. So don't worry if you're in another part of the world, because if you were actually 5 miles away or 5,000 miles away, it wouldn't make a difference with technology these days. So that's it. See you next month. Thanks so much.